There is a shadow that falls over every golden marquee. Behind the glamour, behind the spotlights, behind the smiles frozen forever on the silver screen, there was pain the cameras never showed. The golden age of Hollywood gave us icons who felt untouchable, faces so beautiful they seemed immune to time itself. But even legends bleed. Even icons break. In the decades between the 60s and the 90s, some of the brightest stars in American cinema were quietly losing a battle no script could save them from. Cancer did not care about fame. It did not care about box office numbers or standing ovations. It crept into dressing rooms, into hospital beds, into the private moments the public never saw. Some fought in silence. Some turned their diagnosis into one final act of courage. And some left warnings behind that Hollywood still remembers today. This is the story of the actors who lit up our screens, and the disease that dimmed their light forever. Stay with me, because one of these stories will break your heart in a way you never expected. Yul Brynner. Yul Brynner walked onto the stage over 4,000 times as the King of Siam, and audiences worshipped him like royalty in real life too. His shaved head, his commanding voice, his magnetic presence made him one of the most recognizable men in the world. But offstage, Brynner was living a secret that would eventually destroy him. He smoked heavily for most of his adult life, a habit so common in old Hollywood that no one thought twice about it. What fans didn't know was how deeply that habit had already begun poisoning his lungs. In 1983, doctors delivered the news that changed everything: lung cancer. Brynner kept performing, refusing to let the illness steal his final bow, but by 1985, his body could fight no more. What happened next shocked the entire country. Before he died, Brynner recorded a haunting message, a warning to the world about the dangers of smoking, knowing it would only air after his death. When it finally aired, millions watched a dead man beg them not to make his mistake. It became one of the most powerful anti-smoking messages in television history. But his story was only the beginning of a devastating pattern in Hollywood. Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen was the definition of cool, the rebel with sunglasses and a motorcycle, a man who made danger look effortless. He raced cars, flew planes, and lived like the rules of ordinary men didn't apply to him. Fans had no idea what was really happening beneath that fearless image. In 1979, McQueen began suffering from a persistent cough that wouldn't go away. Doctors soon delivered devastating news: mesothelioma, an aggressive cancer linked to asbestos exposure. It left everyone stunned, because McQueen seemed like the last man on earth cancer could ever touch. Investigators believe his exposure came from years earlier, possibly from protective suits used in racing, or asbestos found on movie sets and even in his own home insulation. The tragedy was chilling: something meant to protect him may have quietly been killing him for years. McQueen refused to accept defeat easily. He traveled to Mexico seeking experimental treatments, desperate for any chance at survival, even as his health rapidly declined. But by November 1980, the man who conquered every daredevil stunt in Hollywood could not conquer this. His death sent shockwaves through the industry, proving that even the toughest men on screen were fragile underneath. And tragically, his story wouldn't be the last of its kind. John Wayne was America's cowboy, the symbol of grit, strength, and unshakable toughness. For decades, audiences watched him ride into danger without fear, believing nothing could bring him down. But behind the cameras, the truth was darker. In 1964, Wayne was diagnosed with lung cancer, a battle he fought fiercely, even undergoing surgery that removed part of his lung. He survived, and Hollywood celebrated him as a symbol of resilience. He even joked publicly about beating what he called the Big C, inspiring countless fans facing their own diagnoses. But cancer wasn't finished with him. Years later, a new and crueler enemy emerged: stomach cancer. This time, the fight was far more brutal. Wayne endured surgery after surgery, his once powerful frame growing weaker with every passing month. Despite the pain, he continued making public appearances, refusing to let fans see him as anything less than strong. What happened next shocked the nation. In June 1979, the legendary Duke lost his final battle, leaving behind a legacy of courage on screen and off. His death marked the end of an era, but the tragic pattern in Hollywood was far from over. Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Hepburn was elegance itself, a woman whose grace made an entire generation fall in love with old Hollywood glamour. She wasn't just an actress, she was a symbol of timeless beauty and quiet strength. But behind that radiant smile, a silent threat was slowly building inside her. In the early 1990s, after years of dedicating herself to humanitarian work with UNICEF, Hepburn began experiencing unusual abdominal pain during a trip to Somalia. Doctors initially dismissed it as exhaustion or a parasite. What happened next shocked everyone who knew her. Further tests revealed a rare and aggressive form of appendiceal cancer, already spreading through her body. By the time doctors caught it, the disease was far along, leaving little room for hope. Hepburn faced her diagnosis with the same grace she carried throughout her entire career, choosing to spend her final months surrounded by family instead of chasing desperate treatments. In January 1993, the world lost one of its most beloved icons. Her death felt deeply personal to millions, as though Hollywood itself had lost a piece of its soul. And she wouldn't be the last beloved star cancer would take far too soon. Michael Landon. Michael Landon was the face of wholesome American television, a man millions welcomed into their living rooms every single week. He represented family, faith, and hope on screen. But in real life, his story would become one of the most heartbreaking in Hollywood history. In April 1991, Landon began suffering from severe stomach pain that wouldn't subside. Doctors delivered a devastating diagnosis: pancreatic cancer, one of the deadliest forms of the disease, already advanced. And this was only the beginning of the hardest chapter of his life. Instead of hiding his illness, Landon made a stunning decision. He chose to speak publicly and honestly about his battle, appearing on national television to share his diagnosis with the same warmth he brought to every character he played. Fans were heartbroken, watching a man who once seemed larger than life fight for every single day. Despite trying alternative treatments and refusing to give up, the cancer proved too aggressive. Just 3 months after his diagnosis, in July 1991, Michael Landon passed away, leaving behind a nation in mourning. His courage in facing death publicly changed how America talked about cancer forever. Robert Taylor was once one of MGM's most breathtaking leading men, a face so perfect that studio executives called him the most beautiful man in Hollywood. He starred alongside the biggest names of his era, radiating charm in every frame. But few fans realized that behind his handsome exterior, a slow and dangerous habit was already taking its toll. Taylor smoked constantly throughout his career, a routine so normalized in old Hollywood that it was almost part of the image. What happened next shocked those closest to him. By the late 1960s, Taylor began struggling to breathe, his once powerful voice growing weaker with every passing month. Doctors soon confirmed the devastating truth: lung cancer had taken hold, and it was already advancing rapidly. He tried to keep working, determined not to let illness define his final chapter, but the disease moved faster than his will to fight it. In June 1969, Robert Taylor passed away, leaving behind decades of unforgettable performances and a quiet warning about the price of Hollywood's smoking culture. His death added another haunting name to a growing and tragic pattern. Yvonne De Carlo. Yvonne De Carlo dazzled audiences with exotic beauty long before fans knew her as the unforgettable matriarch of a beloved 60s sitcom family. She had lived a full and dramatic life, filled with glamour, heartbreak, and reinvention. But what most fans never saw was the long, quiet struggle she faced behind closed doors in her later years. As she aged, health complications multiplied, and by the early 2000s, De Carlo's body was fighting battles far from any movie set. Reports revealed she had been dealing with serious health issues, including heart problems that left her increasingly fragile. And this was only part of a larger decline. In her final years, cancer entered the picture as well, compounding the toll already taken by years of health struggles. She spent her last days quietly, away from the spotlight that once made her a household name, cared for by family instead of fans. In January 2007, Yvonne De Carlo passed away, closing the chapter on a career that spanned generations of American entertainment. Her story reminded audiences that even beloved television legends were not immune to the cruelty of illness. These were not just actors. They were the heartbeat of an entire era, the faces that shaped American culture, love, courage, and dreams. And yet, behind every golden frame, cancer proved that fame could not buy immortality. Their stories remind us that even legends were human, fragile, and mortal, just like the rest of us. But their courage, their talent, and their legacies will live forever on the screen. Old Hollywood may be gone, but its magic still lingers every time we watch their films. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe, because there are so many more untold Hollywood stories waiting to be remembered.